And how was the transition into a new neighborhood?
I loved it. It was nice. It was really nice, but sometimes I get homesick for Logan, and sometimes I would disappear and end up over there with my grandma. My mother would really spank us, you know, you're not supposed to be over there, you live over here. But I missed the neighborhood. I did. It was my home.
And after elementary school, which junior high did you go to?
I went to Smedley Junior High. I believe now it's Carr.
Yes.
Yeah, I went there. I hated it. It felt like I was in a reform school.
Can you speak a little bit more about why you thought, why you didn't like it and why it felt like a reform school?
Because it seemed like, you know, they just put all us Mexicans in one certain classes, just Mexicans in one classroom. It wasn't diverse.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, and that's the part I hated. I had a history teacher, and she was trying to teach history, a very kind woman. And these Mexican kids were so unruly. I don't think they wanted to learn. I don't know what. But I remember this poor teacher was trying to teach this class, and she says, okay, you guys, nobody goes out to lunch until everybody shuts up. Well, guess what? Some of the kids took out their tacos and started eating there, and I didn't eat any lunch. So I went up to the counselor and I talked to her and I told her, listen, I can't be in that classroom, I told her. So she moved me at another classroom. There was always fights all the time between the Mexican kids and the African American kids.
Mm-hmm.
There was always all kinds of fight. I didn't like that school. I hated it. And they had bus service, but the city moved the boundaries so that we couldn't get bus service. They didn't want to spend the money because it was a long walk from where my parents lived all the way down to Smedley.
Mm-hmm.
They only did bus service if you had passed Civic Center. So we had to always walk 3 miles a day to school and 3 miles back in the rain, hail, whatever. So I didn't like that. I liked my high school better than I did my junior high.
Now you mentioned that at Smedley they kept all the classes separated. So even though it was supposed to be an integrated school, the classes were separated between ethnicities.
Yeah, it was. I hated it. I didn't like it. And I asked Ruby about that, my friend about that. She goes, why are they doing that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't understand why. And I used to complain to my parents about it. But I was so glad to get out of that junior high. And then I went into high school. It was just totally different. It was more diverse, and I was very happy in high school.
Can you speak about what high school you went to and a little bit more about it?
Santa Ana High.
And what did you like about Santa Ana High School?
It was really diverse. I had friends, Japanese friends, African American friends. I had a lot of Hispanic friends, Mexican friends. I had a lot of white kids that were good friends of mine. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. There wasn't that many Mexican kids going to Santa Ana High at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few. Some of them were from Logan. Some of them went to Lathrop. And then there was the area where I live. It was nice, really nice. I really enjoyed my high school years.
And what did you do in high school? Did you participate in any clubs or sports? What made it so enjoyable?
Well, I liked sports, and then I didn't participate a lot in any clubs or anything. I just went there to get educated and get ready for college. It was just a nice environment to be with. I love all of my teachers. They were great. They were great teachers.
Did you have a favorite teacher at Santa Ana High School?
Mr. Ashball, a
Mr.
science
Ashball?
teacher,
Science teacher. What science did he teach?
biology.
Biology.
He, I just saw him. Santa Ana High has a reunion at Irvine Park every year. It's the weekend after the Labor Day, and everybody that went to Santa Ana High goes to that reunion. It's a lot of fun because you see a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt goes, and she went to Santa Ana High back in the 50s. My older brother goes there too. So it's kind of neat to see old friends and talk to them, see everybody, what everybody doing now, and it's a lot of fun.
You spoke about at Santa Ana High School, you wanted to get educated and get ready for college.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite subject? And in high school, what were your goals? What did you want to become after high school?
To tell you the truth, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to go to college. But I didn't end up going to college. I only went for a while. And then I kind of liked wanting to be more creative. And so my parents couldn't help me in college, and I had to work. So I decided just to go into beauty school.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied with my friend Ruby. We both went. And it was free. It was a scholarship. So that's what I did for a few years. And one day I just got tired of doing that and decided to work at a bank. Just like that. No experience. I went to so many interviews and nobody wanted to hire me.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I got hired at an independent bank in Fullerton. Then later on I was hired by Wells Fargo. So I worked 38 years with them. Yeah. Then I went to college after that. So, like I said, it was difficult to decide what I wanted to do at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what I was going to go to college with until I started working for Wells Fargo Bank. Then I knew what to study at the time.
And how long did you stay in you went to beauty school, and how long did you do that for?
I did that for about 3 or 4 years. I worked in Beverly Hills for a while, and then I worked here in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I said, wait, I don't have no benefits here. I have to pay for my own health insurance. And one day I said, you know what, this is not what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What possessed me to even think of going into working in a bank? I don't know. I just said, I'm just going to go work at a bank, and that's what I did.
And you mentioned that eventually when you got to Wells Fargo, you went back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Because you found your purpose. And what was that purpose? Why did you go back to school? For what exactly?
Well, I wanted to get promoted.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to learn more about business, financial.
Mm-hmm.
So I took some accounting classes and computer classes and so forth. I wanted to get educated.
Mm-hmm.
So I can pursue my career at Wells Fargo. I love my job at Wells Fargo. I truly did.
And which Wells Fargo did you work at?
Many of them.
Many of them?
Here's the one here on Santa Ana. It used to be on Santa Ana and Santa Clara. I worked there many years. I worked in Newport Beach, commercial banking. I worked in the trust. And then I worked at, my last years I worked in research.
Mm-hmm.
And I did adjustments between banks through Federal Reserve. Any discrepancy that was found in between banks, that's what I did. I researched it and found the discrepancies and corrected them. I worked on forgeries, and I worked in just about anything you can think of. It would come to my desk and I would correct it, make the adjustments. I loved it. It was a good job.
And When did you retire from Wells Fargo?
2009.
Now I want to kind of change pace a little bit, and I understand that you became involved within the city of Santa Ana in some community service. What organization were you part of?
Santa had a neighborhood organization. It was Sano at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what really drove me in is that, you know, you go to church, help the community, help the church and everything. And I was always giving money here to the church. And I said, gee, I never see this money go out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I seen a lot of things going on in the neighborhood that was bothering my mother and my father, and a lot of things that were bothering my grandmother and Logan. So I just decided to be part of an organization to make things happen. You know, there was no social justice back then.
Mm-hmm.
The city was going through a lot of growing pains,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff that was happening, and no one was doing anything about it. So I spoke to some people that were Jesuit priests, and they trained us. They taught us everything we needed to know about being an activist. But I was more involved in financing. You know, I became a treasurer,
Mm-hmm.
and I do the fundraising. And my girlfriend Ruby was the one that was out there in the community helping poor people. She was out in the community just helping people, and then a lot of these areas in Santa Ana were redlined by the banks. A lot of people couldn't get loans. Businesses couldn't get loans because they just felt it was a risk to invest or give loans out to anybody in the businesses around here.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of like, oh, it's Santa Ana, forget it. No, that was wrong. We wanted to change things here in Santa Ana. We wanted to eliminate a lot of crime that was happening here. I don't think the city fathers long ago had a vision for this city at that time, and now, you know, I haven't gone downtown in a long time, and I was pretty angry because I didn't like where it was going, at the direction it was going long ago. And I recently, last month, I got off my car and decided to walk the streets again like I did. And I was very happy because it seemed like it was more diverse now. And it was beautiful. It was like it was long ago, but it was just different. So I said to myself, well, you know what? I think I'm going to come again, and I'm going to bring my mother for lunch here because a lot changed with being in that organization.
And when did you become involved in this organization? Around what year?
It was 1978.
And you spoke about these Jesuit priests that helped you, kind of taught you and your other colleagues how to become involved. Were these priests from Our Lady of Pilar?
No, they were Jesuit priests that, do you know anything about the Jesuit priests?
A little bit.
They're kind of the soldiers of the church. They're activists, just like the Pope is. He's a Jesuit.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people that were during the Crusades out there fighting these wars. And these are the Jesuits. At one time, that Pope John Paul said, hey, during the Central American War that was going on in Central America, some of those priests were generals because they were out there for social justice for the family, for the people over there. Well, here, they taught us to have that we have a voice here. We can go out and make changes, and it's not going to happen unless we go out there and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they just trained us what to say, go to City Hall. They taught us everything, how to be a community leader.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew nothing. All we knew is that I am tired of the city. I don't like what's going on. It's deteriorating. There's too much crime. we need to make changes. And they taught us all this. And it was a lot of fun because it was all the neighborhoods getting together and being one organization. And we build neighborhood organizations out of this, almost like a homeowners association. And now that's what we have here in these communities here in Santa Ana now. And I mean, it's quite a change to how it was before. And I know now some of the neighborhoods are in trouble right now, especially the southwest part of Santa Ana. They're going to have a peace walk tomorrow because they have too much crime going on in their community. They want change, and I don't blame them. And hopefully they can go to city council, they can go to the right officials and make it happen. You know, this is their home.
You talked about your grandparents and your parents who lived in different neighborhoods, seeing problems within their areas. Can you speak about these problems that they had and why they wanted them to change?
We mean like my grandparents, what problems they had?
Yeah, you said that the neighborhoods itself where they were living, they saw problems within the community, and that's what kind of helped spark these organizations to grow.
Well, in my grandmother's neighborhood, the city wanted to build a on-ramp onto the 5 freeway right in the middle of the neighborhood. They didn't care. They wanted to just knock down those poor houses where all these poor Mexicans were living. We said, wait a minute here, that can't be. That can't happen. So that's when they decided the only way that we can stop this from happening is to have it rezoned. And that's what they did. They went to the Planning Commission, then they went to City Hall, and they finally got it rezoned, and they preserved the community. But they were going to knock down all these houses right in the middle of the neighborhood. So by rezoning, that meant that it was rezoned for commercial and then residential, and that's how they kept their neighborhoods. And then my mother's neighborhood had a lot of crime. A lot of crime. They had a lot of bars there. They had junkyards. They were piling up the cars. There were junkyards all over the street. Junk cars everywhere. And we had to go to city council, and they had to establish ordinance and go after these owners of these junkyards and have more restrictions on them so that won't have all these junk cars all over the neighborhood. There were parking cars everywhere. It was terrible. You can't live like that. Then there was a lot of crime too. My mother had a bar right in their neighborhood. They would have their parties and loud music, and then the next day my mom was cleaning up all this mess everywhere. It just got out of control in neighborhoods. It was too much crime. So all of the people got together and said, enough is enough. So they went to city council and complained, and changes were made. They closed down that bar over there near where my mom was. It's there, but they're not allowed to have any loud music anymore. They're not allowed to have any wild parties there. Now, my mother recently had problems with the roach coaches there. They had those big, huge trucks that were there selling food, and they wouldn't even clean up anything. They leave all the trash there. Mom already shut down 4 of them. She's out to get 1 more, and she will. She will do it. See, they taught us this. They taught us where to go, what department of government we can go to here in the city. And all we have to do is get all the neighbors together, go over there and raise hell. And things happen, things change.
Did you find it hard to gather up the rest of the community members, or was this kind of widespread around the neighborhood?
We had problems getting the community together because sometimes we'd have meetings and they would say this and this and this and that. But when it came to getting everybody together and say, okay, now we're going to city council, let's go, some of them wouldn't go. Some of them were scared. They were afraid because some people were not here legally, some of the neighbors, and they were afraid that the immigration would come and take them away. That was part of it. So they were afraid. You know, it's kind of like everybody complained. It's hard to be a leader because everyone would complain. And then when it came to really stepping up the plate and getting something done, they would get scared. So we were already used to that. We knew how to deal with that. So we had to be their voice.
And the neighborhood that you were speaking about, where your mom lived and where you grew up.
Artesia Pilar.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit about how the neighborhood got its name?
Artesia? You know, it's been Artesia for a long time, that street. And then why they put Pilar was because of the church that was built there. Originally, it was an old wooden building, and it was called Mount Carmel years ago. And everybody went to that church in that community area. I see that little building is still there, and I can't imagine how it accommodated that many people back then. But there wasn't that much back then. And it was just a church where I can remember my grandmother making out of 20 million tamales all the time for these. They used to call them jamaicas or fiestas, to raise money for the church all the time. Always raising money. Always trying to sell raffle tickets, everything, just to help the church. So that name came about when we started organizing different parts of the city, neighborhoods, and we called that Artesia Pilar because of the church. But originally it was Mount Carmel, that little tiny church that was just there. We all went. There was that church there, and there was another church over here on Grant, Guadalupe Church, and there was a church in Dauhai. And a church in St. Joseph, but most of the white people went there. So we just had small little churches. That's how it got its name.
And can you explain a little bit about what the neighborhood association wanted to do for the rest of the residents?
Well, they just wanted to get together and make things better for them, you know, provide neighborhood cleanup, you know, bring these few dumpsters in the neighborhood to clean up everything. Some of these people, they don't know. I mean, they want to clean their yards, make things better, but they can't because they don't know how. So, you know, there's dumpsters, they have neighborhood cleanups. Sometimes we get together as neighbors and complain and say, what can we do? This is a problem here. What do we do? Mom has a whole list of places where she can call and she gets things done. And that's all it takes. It's just a few neighbors calling and complaining about something, and something gets done. Like I said, those road coaches were terrible. Mom got rid of them all except for one, and she's about ready to get rid of that one too. You know, people just want to clean their neighborhood.
You also spoke about violence in the neighborhood. What sort of violence did the neighborhood have?
A lot of traffic accidents or people that are drunk. People were being run over. People that were speeding. We didn't have traffic lights where we should have. In my neighborhood, they had Fremont School, and so many women would take their children in the morning to school, and they were so afraid that crossing the street there on Civic Center, because the cars were going 100 miles an hour practically. So they finally put a signal there after fighting for so many years. They finally did that. But that's after this poor crosswalker got run over 3 times. They finally put a signal there. So it doesn't happen unless you work all together to make it happen. So it's just a matter of making a few phone calls, talking to some city officials, and constantly following up. That's all you do, is constantly following up, attending some of the city council meetings, giving your input and how you feel. I'm representing this neighborhood and so forth. That's how things get done.
And what sort of, you mentioned the traffic lights, what other sort of improvements did you see
In that
done
neighborhood? that El Salvador Park now. It's really nice. There for a while, city didn't have the money. I don't understand. They get all this money for all these taxes. What are they doing with the money? But now they've remodeled it and it looks nice. They've done a lot of things that, like one day I was complaining to the city. I said, God, you know, my mother's out there sweeping out in their driveway out there and it has a big sinkhole right there. Anybody could fall down there right near a curve. So I called the city and complained. Guess what they did? They paved the whole darn street. I couldn't believe it. I said, wow, after bugging these guys for a whole month, they finally paved the whole street. But they didn't pave and put the white, you know, the white little things that divide, you know, the street from one car going one way. I don't care, but they paved the street. It was beautiful. And I thought, well, if I didn't know who to call, nothing would have happened. And then we had, they had this thing the city wanted to do was permit parking because a lot of people had problems with parking. There wasn't enough parking because people were using their garages and living in them and parking their cars out in their garage. It was so crowded. Some of them were parking them out in their front lawn and it wasn't looking good. So they started to say that, you know, certain house or residents would have a permit parking. You can only permit 2 cars per resident. You could park out in the streets and so forth. And then we talked about it as neighbors and said, you know, I don't think this is going to work because so many people have 3, 4 cars. And then some of the people were making their house like a business. They were having a mechanic, you know, there were mechanics and fixing cars. So we had to go to the city and then and we spoke to the code enforcement people. And finally, they had to issue out citations to some of these people because they were making a business out of their garages and there wasn't enough parking. There was a lot of things going on in the neighborhood. And my mom says, we have to fix this. All the neighbors were complaining. Well, when they said they were going to have this permit parking, I said, well, what do you do if you're handicapped? Because I'm disabled. What am I going to do there? And I said, well, there's no problem. Then you don't have to pay for permit parking. Well, the guy goes, well, let me see your driver's license. Are you really disabled? Yes, I am. And that's when I was living with my mother. Well, a week later, I ended up with a handicap parking right in there in front. I couldn't believe it. I said, I didn't even ask for it. You know, it's just, you learn who to contact in the city. And now with this code enforcement now, these people are not using their house as a business anymore. And they don't park their cars on top of the front lawn anymore. That's gone now. You get cited for that. And then recently one of the neighbors started putting oil and stuff, draining all that oil on the drain area. Well, Mom got upset. She knew who to call right away. She called the fire department. And they gave the guy a citation. He had to clean up all that stuff. See, it's just, we wouldn't have learned all these things if it hadn't been for the Jesuit priests. They help us just know government in general and who to contact in government to make our neighborhoods a more safer and better place to live. Never would have learned all this if we didn't join this organization.
And I think it's very important that you mentioned that you had sort of like a mentor of the priest kind of mentored residents on how to become active and become involved. I think as the new generation comes in, we have a lot of youth. How do you think you can pass down this same sort of information to the youth nowadays?
They're growing up now, and they're realizing and they're learning from their parents a lot of things. I'm really proud of a lot of the youth here that live in Santa Ana. They're entirely different than the youth that was, say, 20 years ago. they're more informed, and they're a lot more responsible, and they want to change their neighborhoods. They want things better in life. And they're now going to school and getting an education. And they're giving back in their neighborhoods. And I think that's wonderful. Because I'd always thought, growing up and raising my family and having a good job was enough, but it's not anymore. We all need to help our communities and serve God also. It's important. And I see a lot of these kids in our neighborhood. I cannot believe it. There was this young man there. He was a little homeboy, always getting in trouble. But I couldn't believe this young man that he spoke so clearly, and it seemed like he was a bright person. I said, "What are you doing with these gang members here?" Well, he decided he was going to go to college. So first he had to get his high school diploma, so he went and got his high school diploma. Next thing you know, he went to college, and then he was accepted at Harvard. Harvard, there's a little gang member here. I couldn't believe it. It's like, he came out of our community. I was so proud of him. And now he's a tax lawyer at Wall Street. I was amazed. And now he's out helping people here in Orange County. He's a lawyer. And he says, "I got to get back to the neighborhood." He says, "I would have never been where I'm at if it wasn't for my upbringing and my community, my city. They made me what I am now." Don't you think that's beautiful? I'm really proud of the kids that are coming out of these schools now. I wish, I see a good future here in Santa Ana now. I'm proud of it.
Were there any other organizations within the city that you were involved with, or just Sano?
It was Sano, and then Santa Ana, and then I was in NHS also, National Housing Services, for a while. I had an illness, and that took me away from being involved in the community for a while. It took me in a different direction, and I wanted to pay back to God for helping me live. And I started doing more voluntary work to help people that were sick, old, homeless. I went in that direction. So I went a while away from my community and my city because I needed to help and get back to God. What, He gave me back my life. So I decided to go that direction. So I stayed away for a while. My friend Ruby, she said, "You got to come back. We really need you." I said, "I can't right now. I can't. I'm doing something else here, But every so often I go to the meetings. I do miss that. I really do. But, sometimes you have to do that. Go somewhere else and then you come back. But I'll always be here because my mother's here. I worry about her all the time. Something bothers her sometimes. And she goes out and does something. So many of the neighbors come to her. She's 89 years old. They complain, "Gosh, I hate this. It's happening, that happening in a neighborhood." And she just makes a few phone calls and that's it. Just like the neighborhood leader. She's 89 years old. She has so many friends. I cannot believe how many friends she has in a neighborhood. Some people are just right out of Mexico, They come, they don't know where to go, what to do. And my mom's there just helping them. And she was part of that organization too in Sano. She was in the finance committee, as I was.
And do you think it would be important for youth nowadays to get involved with these neighborhood associations?
For me to get involved?
For the youth to get involved?
I think so. It would be really important. I mean, especially if their families live here in Santa Ana. It's important. I mean, this is a different kind of neighborhood organization than it is perhaps in Newport Beach or Mission Viejo. It's a different neighborhood organization entirely. It's not the same. This is different here in Santa Ana, because these are problems we have that they don't have over there. And I think it's important for each youth to get involved in their community, where their parents live, wherever they go. One day they'll buy a home in who knows where, Anaheim Hills or whatever. It's important to get involved in a neighborhood organization. It concerns them, their children, the schools where their children will attend. It's important.
I have finished everything that I wanted to ask you, Yvonne. But if there's anything that I didn't ask you that you might want to speak about right now, you may say so at this time.
Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of shy. Does anyone else have questions about anything?
If you don't have anything else, then I'll open it up to the rest. So remember to say your name loud and clearly, and ask your question to Yvonne.
My name is Alejandro Mendez. I'm meaning to ask, like, how was it difficult for you to to see your community being like changed? Like, when you said that the fields were being removed for the freeway, like, was it difficult?
It was difficult, yeah. It's like my grandmother used to say, the enemy of progress is tradition. We have to move. We have to progress. Because you always want to always have the city the way it was. And for many, many, many years I'd go, oh God, Santa Ana, what is happening? Believe it or not, at one time in Santa Ana, they started building all these shopping centers and discount stores here and there, and nobody was going to Santa Ana anymore. And there was a lot of buildings that were empty. What happened? It was a ghost town practically. And then next thing you know, buildings were, businesses were opening up. And there were all Mexican restaurants and bridal shops and all this whole bit. And then I used to go downtown and go, this is not what I want. I want a more diverse city, more diverse. Like, why can't it be like the city of Orange, where everybody goes there? They say Old Town Orange, and everybody goes there. They get off their car, they go eat at the coffee shops, everything. Why can't Santa Ana be that way? Well, like I said, a few weeks back, I went and walked. I parked my car and walked around. And I said, hey, this is pretty cool. This is nice now. It's nice. It was difficult to see my city changing. Like I said, I don't think the city fathers at that time had a vision for the city. They didn't think beyond. It wasn't a planned community when they planned the city. I didn't think they had planned, and I don't think they even thought it would ever grow that large. They didn't think about that, and they should have. And I think Santa Ana is similar like Anaheim is. Anaheim grew so fast too. They have Disneyland, they have all the hotels over there everywhere. And Santa Ana is the same thing. It grew too fast. And we just weren't prepared for it. And I think it was difficult for us people that have been here for so many years to see it grow so fast. And it just changed, and we just were upset because it was changed. We were even angry that it changed. But then we said, you know what? It has to change, and it might not be the way we want it to be. It'll never be that way. But at least now I can walk down there and I go, you know what? This is really nice now, because it seems like it's diverse. And now I can walk around here. I can eat at a little coffee shop here. It's nice. It really is. It's something to be proud of. If you live here in Santa Ana, you'd be proud. Yeah. Any other questions?
My name is Victor Elias, and you said that the streets back then were dark.
Pardon me?
My name is Victor Elias, and you said that back then the streets were dark for the fear of bombing.
Yeah.
Did you ever have drills at your school?
we always had drills all the time. When we were going, fire drills, any kind of drills. Believe it or not, people at that time were afraid that we were going to have a nuclear attack. People had bomb shelters in the 50s. Could you believe that? I remember my brother was building a bomb shelter back then because they were afraid we were going to get bombed. You think that's silly now? Can you imagine that? My grandfather had a bomb shelter. Yeah. We really thought that, yeah, believe it or not, during that time, during the war, they thought the Japanese would invade California. So everything was dark. Even the factories that were doing military contracts, they were all dark. They had to be, because if they were to come into the mainland and start bombing, the first thing they would do is bomb the military areas, the shipyards, and so forth. So everything was dark back then. Everybody had candles. They were afraid. They didn't have to do it, but they did it because they wanted to make sure they felt safe. I know this because my grandmother told me this and my mother told me that back then.
My name is Javier Morales, and my question to you is, how did the construction of the 5 freeway, also known as the Santa Ana Freeway, affect you and your community as a whole?
Well, we saw some people leave the community because their homes were right in the way. They had to sell, and I know that they didn't get what they should have gotten for their property, and they had to move. So it was really sad from what my grandmother told me. I was young, but it was really sad to see the houses move. And we thought about it from what my grandmother tells me. A freeway? What is a freeway? What in the world is that? Because if we wanted to go into LA, we had downtown 4th Street had these tracks. They had these electric cars that would take you to Long Beach, and then it would take you into LA. That was, I don't know why they did that, why they removed them, because we really need some kind of transportation here in Santa Ana to take us to Long Beach and LA. We really do, besides buses. But it hurt. It was difficult for my parents and my grandparents to see a freeway, a big hole right in the middle, right in the northern part of the neighborhood. And they were building a freeway. And they go, what's that mean? How fast can we go? I mean, people were going like 25, 30 miles an hour back then. Yeah, so it was a real kind of scared, but then they said, well, that's progress. We're growing. Yeah, that's what they thought about.
I have 2 more questions. Do you remember when that part of the freeway finished, by any chance?
I don't. I just know I was a kid, and I remember when we would take the freeway. Because before, when we'd go to LA, we'd have to go down Beach Boulevard and then hit Whittier. Or a lot of times we would go down, Beach Boulevard, and then sometimes we hit Firestone. There was no freeway. It took forever to get to LA back then. So it was a big change to have a freeway. Yeah, it really was. You would get to LA a lot faster. And we used to go out to LA to go to the Grand Central Market there on, I think it was on Main Street or Broadway. I think it was Broadway. And we used to buy all kinds of foods and stuff because it was pretty cheap back then to do that. And then we'd come back to Orange County. We'd do that about once a month. We would do that.
Did the construction of the freeway affect you? Did it sway your family to move out of there, or?
No, because some families had to move out, yeah, and that was hard. The neighborhood took it really hard because they had lost some neighbors and stuff, but they moved other places and stuff, but they still remained friends, and they were still close, but, it was just progress. How can you stop that from happening? You can't fight it. It was just something that they had to do, is build a freeway. That's the future. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Isabel Marin, and you had mentioned, was there a reason why your family had to move out from Logan? Is there a specific reason for that?
Had to move out from where?
From Logan over to, what was it? You came up?
Well, my parents wanted to buy a larger house. And we had a bathroom that was not inside the house. We had to go into a little house, an outhouse. And my dad just wanted his own home. They paid, at that time, I think they paid $8,000 for the home. And Dad just wanted to move and buy a new home for his family. He had a good job working for the government, so that's what he wanted. But we were there all the time at Logan. Any chance we had, we were always back in the neighborhood. But it was so weird to be separated from our grandparents, because our grandparents, we just go across the alley and there they were. You know, it was so nice to have our grandparents there. So, yeah, that's why we moved. It was a transition, but we were just across town. It was cool. It really was. It was just beautiful back then.
Is there any last remarks that you would like to make, Yvonne?
No, I can't think of anything.
Well, on behalf of the Santa Ana Library, I'd like to say thank you for coming in and conducting this oral history with us.
Thank you. It's hard to remember all these things. It really is.
All right. So we're done.